Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Customer Your Success. I'm your host, Gary Mara, and this is part two of the special one-year retrospective. In part one, we covered the best of chip shots and Does It Hold Water, the segments. And if you haven't seen that episode, please go check it out. It's great stuff. But this is the best of the standard interview segment of the show. That is the meat and potatoes of the show. This is where we have the traditional interviews with wonderful leaders in customer experience, customer success, entrepreneurs, financial planners, all sorts of interesting people. So, this is a series of clips that gives you a flavor for what the show has been all about. To me, this is a quick masterclass in client management and leadership. And that's what I've been trying to do for you this past year. Bring you the best insights from these wonderful leaders, people who I know have something to say and are fabulous at saying it. And, you're going to learn something from it. So, the wonderful part of doing the show is I think I've learned more than anybody. So I've shared these interviews with you because I wanted to talk to these people and get that message out and their messages out. So, yes, this is a customer experience focused show, but we've touched on leadership, financial planning, human resources, job search, a little bit of everything. The structure today is, hey, we're going to go with three sections, right, to break up all these great bits. First, the customer experience folks, the CX people, then the customer success leaders, and then we're going to have the third segment, the leadership folks, the entrepreneurs, thought leaders, culture folks, HR people. Put it all together for you, and if you listen to it start to finish, it's going to be a wonderful journey in how to approach this client-centric success, entrepreneurial success with employee experience, culture, everything. So it's great stuff. Let's get right to it. Okay. So one of the biggest privileges of doing the show has been learning from these tremendous CX leaders who are thinking seriously about where the discipline is headed. Across the conversations, a few things keep coming up, right? CX is constantly being asked to prove itself. Where's the ROI? Ownership is getting distributed, which is good in some ways and not so good in others. Technology is a big part of the conversation. We're living in the age of AI, as I like to say, but it's raising expectations faster than reality can keep up at times. It's AI is maybe a little overhyped, as you might have heard on the show. News flash for you, right? Hey, together these clips, they paint a very honest picture of the current state of customer experience, where it's working, where it's struggling, where it needs to go, how it needs to evolve, and some of the fundamentals as well, right? Just we cover fundies. Don't forget the fundies. What I love about putting these clips together for you is how much wisdom gets packed into just a few minutes. So if something hits home, hey, please go listen to the full episode. There's so much more out there for you. All right, so let's get right to it. In order, you're going to hear from Rick Denton, Sean Albertson, Katie Stabler, Stacy Sherman, Dave Seaton, Natasha Evans, Andrew Carruthers, Chris Hood, Jean-Pierre Dumas, and Chris Hood Part 2. Here are some amazing CX leaders. Let's hit it. So here we go. Rick, your question is, on LinkedIn recently, a well-respected CX expert, and I'll use the word expert, or maybe I won't, a CX dude said, as AI-driven experiences blur the lines between digital and physical, customer expectations will be so seamlessly integrated into business operations that dedicated CX teams will become redundant. Therefore, CX as a discipline will be dead by 2030. Does the defense case hold water?
I like the phrasing, and I like the way that it's said. I understand the point that's being made. However, Your Honor, I do not believe that the case holds water. And the reason why I don't believe it holds water is because as long as, well, there will come a point that it's just our bots ordering from bots. But until that point, humans are involved in the experience. Humans, as customers, will continue to be seeking experiences. And so whether it is labeled the CX team, and I think that's where the nuance comes in, is maybe the CX team goes away, but there will always be a need to focus on the customer experience. Mm-hmm. And if that means that we have so successfully woven our 90s and aughts process improvement and operational excellence teams with our aughts, teens, and 20s customer experience teams into some label that has not been created yet, fantastic. If that means that CX teams are dead because they've been woven and merged with process and operations in such a wonderful way that the customer's experience is delivered seamlessly, I'm fine with the label fading. But no, Your Honor, there is no way that the need to focus on customer experience will ever fade away.
Ultimately, one of the problems we're having right now is it's changing so fast under our feet. I mean, customer expectations are growing exponentially because their last best experience with the best companies is now their minimum expectation for everybody else. And so, those of us in business, even if we're not getting worse, the expectations are getting higher. So we feel like we're getting worse. But the other side of it is CX as a job, a career, as a function in business has gone back and forth between centralized, decentralized, et cetera. And we're really in this midst of decentralizing customer experience in many ways. Customer experience can either be looked at as a noun or a verb. Like customer experience as a noun is more the people who do the work, and it's like surveys, it's function. The verb of customer experience is exactly that. It is the experience that customers have with your organization, which means it's everything.
Right.
From website to call center, obviously the more traditional, to chatbot, to brand, to everything now, every type of interaction is part of that experience. And because of that, this decentralized approach has pushed, say, all right, well, now everybody's going to do CX. Well, here's the problem. When everybody is responsible, no one's really responsible. I like to use that quote a ton because, the reality is at that point, there's nobody leading the ship really. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing. And that's where the silos come in and things get worse. So,
but I think, and actually not just what I think, but what you see in the research is customers are struggling to trust companies. And when I read that, trust was one of the biggest drivers of customer experience and has been for the last few years, according to the research. That actually really made me quite sad. Trust should be intrinsic. It should be standard. It should be basic. As a customer, we should be able to trust the company that we are purchasing products or services from. The things that drive customer experience and customer satisfaction should be the fun things, getting things absolutely right, seamless, frictionless, wow moments,
Right.
But trust? So I think it really shows actually how damaging industries are, not just any one particular industry, but actually how, as customers, we've kind of lost our faith in customer service and customer experience. Yep. And I mean, the good news there is that it shouldn't be too difficult to build trust with your customers. You've just got to get the basics right, the fundamentals right. But I think that's really sad that actually trust is a big thing. And you mentioned, growing use of technology and the innovation and the sharing and all of the things that should be driving improved customer experience actually are probably going the other way for us. Growing use of technology, there's going to be a drop before there's a peak, right? We're going to see people trying things and failing things, and customers are going to feel that. And that's natural, it's going to happen, but that's not going to help our hope in increasing customer satisfaction across industries.
So if a company is not doing any measurements today from the CX perspective, NPS is a lovely metric to begin. If people are going to recommend your company, your product, it's good insights. Clearly, you need to know why they will recommend or not. If they're going to recommend, give them a way to recommend. If they're not going to recommend, well, dig further and understand why, and don't do it when their contract's just ending.
Right.
Satisfaction, my belief, it's not good enough.
Sure.
It's mediocre.
Right.
So I like other metrics that are, one is clearly effort. How easy or difficult along the journey is it to get helped? How easy or difficult is it to pay your bill? How easy or difficult was it to pick up your item at the store? Because I just talked about the queue and how long of a line and painful it was, right? Those give you effort is a great way to gauge. There's also, I've been in companies where we measured purpose. So there's purpose-driven brands and they are all about really making people's lives better. Well, that's a metric. Are we actually making your life better because of what we do or what we did or what you bought or how we helped you? So there's a lot of different ways to measure what your core value is and ask your customers, did we deliver on that?
If you go back and look at studies from the CXPA, Gartner, TSIA on the other side of the pandemic in 2022, they all show about the same thing. And that's that half of the journey maps created aren't acted upon. They fail to drive any change in the organization. They're a waste of money. As I like to say, it's an art project. Right?
Yeah, right.
Customer journey map isn't driving change. It's just an art project. And they typically go wrong in one of three areas. The first and the biggest problem is they're mapping internal knowledge. They're mapping the opinions that exist within the company. They're not actually getting customer insight and customer feedback from customers. The second place journey maps go wrong is the project is not aligned with the company's strategic goals, with the strategic plan. The team is mapping some journey that's interesting to them or seems like low-hanging fruit or any number of reasons, but it's not aligned with what the executive team is trying to accomplish that year. And the third reason is the journey map is interesting, but it's not actionable. And that ties back to the quality of the research that's done to create the map. Ultimately, the quality of your map depends on the quality of your research. So those are the three places, the three reasons where people typically go wrong with journey mapping.
And the loyalty you're looking for, just because someone gives to your charity this week doesn't mean they're going to give to them next month or next year. So there's no buried exit. Let's just call it. So how do you build that loyalty, and how do you measure success?
That's a really good question. And so when I first started in the CX role in a charity, you kind of know, right? You know that you need to give people great experiences, and you know that those great experiences lead to loyalty and repeat giving. It's really quite difficult to put your finger on it, like, but actually what really helped is understanding what loyalty means for supporters when they give. So, for example, actually about Loyalty, who I work with now, they've done research and they've surveyed over 500,000 people to find out how they think and feel about charities. What they found was that there are three key drivers of loyalty, which is commitment, satisfaction, and trust. When you start to understand the drivers of loyalty and you start to really understand your supporters and what motivates them and drives them to keep on coming back, you can then use that to do more of it, do better of it. So, yeah. So in terms of actually getting buy-in, do you know what my secret recipe, I guess, is for that?
Please tell us.
Yeah. It's the enthusiasm and the passion for supporter experience and customer experience. And literally like sprinkling that across the organization. And then backing it up with evidence and facts and science. So when I first started, again, 5 years ago, I'd be saying to colleagues, we need to do this. This is really important. And I'd be like, yeah, Tash, okay. And then I'd be like, but no, hang on a minute. It really is important because look, our supporters are saying that they don't feel like we're thanking them enough. And that's really important. And here is the evidence, here is the research and the science behind it. And there is a piece of research which is conducted by About Loyalty, and they measure loyalty. And what they found was that just a 1 point increase in loyalty on average leads to a 20% increase in income. You're able to move people up, improve that supporter experience, improve that loyalty, we can get a 20% increase on income. And you can't hide away from that. Like,
so in storytelling, you need to understand the purpose of your communication. So whether that communication is written communication, whether it's a PowerPoint presentation you're going to send to somebody, whether it's a speech you're giving, a voicemail, understanding whether you want to either inform somebody or influence something, right? So that's where it starts from. Am I trying to inform or influence in this communication? If you're trying to inform, right, that's where you're transferring information. So think of newspapers, news stories, not op-eds, or textbooks, where things like transparency and honesty and delivering that information are important, right? So that you're seen as an honest narrator. Mm-hmm. Now, communicating to influence, much more effective when you can do this face to face. This is where you're trying to move ideas into action. You're trying to persuade people, motivate them. You're trying to change their behavior. So here it's important to have a tailored message where you're trying to understand and then talk to your audience's needs, their interests, their attitudes. You want to have a call to action because you're trying to motivate behavior. So what are you trying to encourage the audience to do? And you're much more likely to be effective if you have an emotional appeal. So if you're informing people, the emotional appeal is not really a part of it. But if you're trying to influence people to do something, having an emotional appeal where you're captivating your audience, you're eliciting emotions that will drive them to action, that's going to be much more effective. And here's where storytelling becomes important. You're using language, visuals, and effective storytelling to then get people to take action.
To you, what does it mean to be customer obsessed, and where does technology fit into the equation?
The easy answer to that is if you're customer first, then the technology is last. Right? I mean, and I've talked about this with a lot of organizations, and AI is the perfect example of how we forget about our customer. We want to focus so much on, well, AI, everybody's using it. Everybody's adopting it. We've got to get on the bandwagon. We've got to use AI. Well, where are we going to use it? I don't know, but we've got to use it, right? As opposed to asking, what is the problem that our customers have? Let's figure out a way to solve that problem. And then at some point in time, we can figure out what the technology is that is going to solve that problem. And in most cases, especially right now with AI, there are probably 10 other products or technologies out there that will solve that problem. And you don't actually have to use AI to do it.
And how far ahead of ourselves do you think we are?
So my research during this book shows that the belief in what AI is capable of versus what AI's current actual capabilities are is about a 7-year gap.
Wow.
Which means what we believe, and I contribute this to a lot of the media, a lot of the marketing hype by large cloud providers such as Google and Microsoft, IBM, NVIDIA, et cetera. All of the investments that are happening in the generative AI space, but also from movies. We watch Terminator and we believe our definition of AI is Skynet, right? We watch something like a WALL-E, and which is probably pretty close to where we're headed, where you've got people who are adrift on a ship, unaware that life is different. So, and who have all gotten lazy. So between the media and the hype and the marketing and the messaging out there, where we are versus what we believe is easily a 7-year gap.
One of the things I often look at, and I'd ask the leaders, and I said, when your people go to lunch, do they hide their badge? Do they cover up their logo, or do they wear it with pride? Because that says a lot about your culture. Mm-hmm. And how that translates to customers. Because if you've got, and we can name, the companies that come to mind, we think about great brands. I'm going to be in the community. I'm going to be in the wild. I'm going to let people know. And if a customer approaches me, we're going to have a conversation, and that's going to be a great conversation, as opposed to, these aren't going to, We don't run from customers and we don't hide from customers, right?
Yeah, that is the challenge between the hype of AI and the reality of what it can do. I share it all the time. Customer first, technology last, AI maybe, because in most cases, and a lot of cases out there, you could build exactly the same thing without AI at all, let alone agentic AI or some, toolbox.
Okay, time to look at customer success leaders. This is a tribute to the folks who are on the front lines, dealing with clients and customers all day, every day, face to face. They have the difficult job of managing these relationships and ensuring customers get to success, whatever that looks like. These folks are oftentimes dealing with misaligned expectations, broken handoffs, unrealistic promises made at some point in the process. Above all, they have to deliver that outcome that clients have come to expect and deserve, as we all know. So it's a very demanding role, very hands-on, and very important to ensure you're building that relationship, getting them to that value you've promised, and just delivering on the promise that you made them in the sales cycle, right? So retaining clients and keeping them happy and referenceable, it's a hard job, but very important. So this section is very practical and honest. It reflects how customer successes become, very important in the building of long-term trust and client retention. So without further ado, let's hear from these wonderful leaders. In order, Christy Falter-Russo, Alon Arenberg, Amber Monroe, Rachel Provan, Josh Nunner, Allison Dixon, and Alyssa Nolte. Maybe if you're not performing the way you should, to diagnose the organization and the way you would think about driving meaningful improvement, given this backdrop that we're working in.
So I think the problem right now is that so many companies are strictly looking at maybe data, or they're going by what their gut tells them, or they're optimizing for processes and optimizing for efficiencies in their organization. And unfortunately, I think that's the wrong way to approach this. In my opinion, in my experiences, it's got to be based on what your customers need and what's
Right.
actually happening in your customer base. So for me, I start everything with understanding, well, why are customers going, or why are they staying, and what are their behaviors being driven by? I think without truly understanding that, and I don't mean making assumptions and guesses, I mean like truly going
Right.
deep into that to really understand it, you can't solve problems that you don't understand. So for me, I've been spending a lot of time on that. So I've got customers who have been wildly successful with us and who continue to grow with us and make big investments. Well, I want to design everything I do around making that a reality for all customers. So what is it about them that makes them successful? Right? So is it their size? Is it their investment? Is it their strategy? Is it, their leadership? I don't know. And so I've been spending a lot more time just doing a deep dive into that. And I recommend that all companies make that their primary focus, because when we just use the data, it's only telling you one piece of the story. And unfortunately, people are making changes and driving strategy solely around that, right?
On the data,
the qualitative, you need the qualitative and the quantitative.
Correct.
It's not enough to just have one. So I'm starting there, because if I understand what's happening with my customers, I can design everything around that and making it a reality.
How do you go about getting that qualitative, not necessarily data-driven perspective?
I speak to my customers.
There you go.
I mean, like,
I was setting you up for an easy one.
If somebody gave a different response to that, I'd be scratching my head a little bit. I tell leaders this all the time, but I'm like, I spend 40% of my week in non-escalated, and I have to articulate that, non-escalated customer conversations. This means
Right.
that I have proactively engaged these customers to have discussions. And I believe that if you are a customer success, a customer experience, a customer, whatever your title is, leader, and you are not spending a good percentage of your time speaking with and engaging proactively with your customers, you are at a huge disadvantage, because you don't truly understand what's going on.
I'm not a huge fan of one generic health score. I don't think one number ever tells the story, because then it's always, yeah, but why? And there's so many factors within it. So
Right.
for me, it's more about understanding what is a good pattern of usage, and when do you have a drop in usage, when do you have an increase. But the trick here, by the way, it's built it around different type of customers, and this is why it takes time. Not all customers are equal. You can take an enterprise account, a different industry. Each one are using your product in a different way, and that's why it takes time. Is using your product once a day, is it good or not? That depends on the industry, it depends on the size, it depends on the model that they're using. And this is why it becomes a little bit more trickier to do.
And we have a strategic growth coaching team that sits down and provides education, and they teach very seasoned and tenured owners how they can grow that line of business. And in turn, we have a great translation to an impact in their revenue. And when they grow, we grow. And in SaaS, I felt like we were constantly trying to show them how our impact hits their bottom line, trying to show that value consistently and often. It helps them stay with us long term, especially if we help them grow and expand their business, triple their size, add multiple locations throughout the country. We have tons of success stories, and we're really proud of like the work that we do. And so it's been really wonderful since we kicked it off. We have, I would say, alley-ooped the sales reps in closing deals consistently. And honestly, there is so much, I would say, so much collaboration between our sales reps and our account managers that it's been a really, really strong success story for Paradigm. So when I came in and took over this department last year in May, we weren't selling anything. We were just services. We were focused on the customers. And I came in and said, I want to cross sell because we just know these customers so deeply, and we've worked so hard to build these relationships that it's just so easy for us to know when to plant the seed and know when to push for that sale. And it makes it so much easier than a sales rep calling, a year in, hey, Gary, can I get your Medicaid business? And they're like, who are you?
Who are you?
Who are you? You haven't earned the right to ask me for that business, but our account managers have. And so we sell, and honest to goodness, it's been great for Paradigm, great for our customers. And honestly, we've done a great job in launching that program. And I'm really proud of the work that we're doing there.
It's like, I don't see anywhere that people are being taught how you build and scale a customer success department, how you act as a manager. And I kept seeing this mismatch between, especially at startups, what executives expected from customer success and how fast that could happen, like what's really involved. And what would happen is they would hire these people who had never been a customer success leader before, and they've never had customer success before. And they'd be like, all right, so you can get us to 110 NRR in 6 months, right? And, we've got you Google Sheet, and the new person be like, absolutely I can, because they want the job and they don't know better. And, everyone ends up feeling like it's a colossal failure. And what really happened was it was the blind leading the blind. But it was damaging to CS, and it was incredibly damaging to these poor young leaders. So after doing one-on-one and seeing that so much, I was like, all right, I've worked with enough of you that I see what we need now.
Tell me a little bit about how you handle that to ensure, because I can see this this type of situation blowing up big time if you don't have that communication between sales, client focused people, and the actual operations team.
We really want to make sure that our clients feel like they know they can reach out to somebody. And I personally want, I'm a big believer in kind of personal accountability for what I'm signing up for our organization to deliver and the outcomes of that. And so as a salesperson, I actually stay on an account once I build a relationship and we are building the dedicated team. I stay on for the first year, so I'm not going anywhere. I want to make sure that what we deliver on comes to fruition. You also get assigned a client services manager at OP360, and so I think the traditional word was one throat to choke. That's probably not the best way to describe that, but one account manager that manages the relationship. And then lastly, operations, right? Operations is the core of what we do. And so we encourage our clients to have a direct interaction, a direct relationship with operations. We never want to feel like they're on an island. And so we welcome that, and our clients communicate with our operations teams directly through, multiple types of challenges multiple types of communication platforms.
And it was my throat that was out there to choke for 20 or 30 years. So cybersecurity customers might not feel that value until something goes wrong, right? It's almost It's kind of like being an umpire in baseball. No one knows you're there until like you blow a call. So
Yeah.
and then you're
No,
all
it's
over
totally true.
right?
We think about that a lot. Customers may, once we're set up, it is a little bit of a set it and forget it product. Like it is protecting their network silently. That's part of the benefit. We patch it, we maintain it, we do everything for you, but it also can be a little bit out of sight, out of mind. So I think about the risk a lot of, your champion leaves, somebody else comes in, they're like, what the heck is this thing? I don't even see it. So thinking about how we show the why is really important. And one of the things that we started doing is just proactively scheduling account health check-ins, making sure that those are valuable to a customer. I'm not into the quarterly business reviews. It's not a thing that we're doing, but making sure our customers understand how do you optimize based on all of the new integrations. Now we integrate with SentinelOne, we integrate with CrowdStrike. Like, have you taken advantage of that, making sure you're getting the most value for your spend on Portnox?
What do most companies get wrong about how people actually make purchasing decisions? Because like you said, I think I'm totally rational and logical about everything. And maybe I am to a fault, but that's just me.
I think the number one thing that companies get wrong of every size is thinking of themselves as their customer. There's so many times where I will go into a company and they are designing a product or a marketing experience or some kind of campaign, and they think it looks great. They think it looks good. They think it works because they have the understanding and the context, and they're creating a campaign that would work on them, instead of really taking a step back and remembering, hey, I am not my customer, and my customer is the one who gets to define what works and what is valuable. I don't get to design that. I don't get to say that. The number of times people are like, oh yeah, we've created this really valuable ebook. You don't get to decide that. Your customer does.
Last but certainly not least are our leadership thought leaders. I've ventured out beyond the world of CX for a reason. I wanted to bring you the approach of client-centric success in various aspects. People who do it for a living, entrepreneurs, people involved in employee experience and company culture, HR leaders, people who worked on company culture, financial planners who have this mindset, people in talent acquisition and recruiting. And I purposely wanted to expand the horizons of the show to show you all the various ways you can use this knowledge and this information and this mindset to be successful. And so to me, this is one of the most incredible 15 minutes of leadership you're ever going to get, right? It's just insight from start to finish, wonderful perspectives, invaluable for me as a host who have listened to all these great leaders and taken it in myself. So hopefully you enjoy it as much as I have. And so it's just a wonderful 50 minutes. So let's get right to it. In order, you're going to hear from Tim McCleary, Caroline Baird, Matt Feiner, Chris Gillen, Shruti Joshi, Bill Casco, Samantha Morales, Francie Jane, Kelly Shookneck, Mark Stern, and Simona Costantini.
Absolutely. Resistance to change is a survival mechanism for us. Yep. It's our brains are literally wired to resist change. We have a top neuroscientist on our team named Dr. Paul Zak. He's on our extended team. And he likes to say our brain is one of the laziest organs in our body. And when you think about what your brain is doing right now just to keep you alive, it's remarkable. So we know that that's how we go through life. We're rapidly putting things in boxes to make sense of them. In order to reduce that resistance to change, we need to start to work on the fear of change. And that's a natural human reaction, right? Mm-hmm. It's the unknown. That fear can prompt anxiety and stress and depression and fatigue. So it makes a lot of sense that we resist. And that's where our model of understand, own, activate comes into play. If we can slow down enough to build understanding of a change, what it does is it provides a sense of control. And there are changes we go through in life that we have zero control over. But if we feel like we have some sense that we can guide ourselves through it, or there's a piece of it that we could be part of, that's really powerful. And that's why we're called the involvement practice. We We want to involve people in the culture changes that are going on inside their organization. Again, culture is how work gets done. So how are we improving how work is getting done inside the organization? Starting with, is the change a pain point or an opportunity?
Right.
Let's break that down. Let's help our team members understand that. Here's why. What often happens is leaders are privy to the change weeks, sometimes months in advance. And so they've gone through this human cycle already. They've figured out that the change, they've started to become okay with it. But then they're sitting down with their teams who are hearing it for the very first time. And that's a shock. And I think sometimes leaders fall into the trap of, well, we need to move fast. Why aren't you getting this?
Right.
Well, you had time to process it. They haven't yet. Slow down a bit and let them go through the same experience you did so that you can begin to embrace the change.
As a leader, what I started to do and what I encourage people to do is reverse the role a little bit and see if what's in it for me. So if while I'm here, while I'm with this business, what am I able to learn? What can I absorb? How can I support my team? How can I set them up for success? Because to me, it's all about legacy at the end of the day. What is going to make me happy and feel like, you know what? I loved my time over there, even though the company maybe wasn't great. I learned a lot. I experienced a lot. I supported my team. And I think the other piece is really around putting yourself first. And as a coach, this is a lot of what I teach. I teach around, what does that look like? We all work so that we can have a better life. So we should never lose sight of the fact that a job is a job is a job. We want to enjoy our jobs, but at the end of the day, it's supposed to provide us that freedom to do the things that we want to ourselves, with our families, whatever that looks like. And so making sure that you plan with that lens in mind. And I teach people how to start setting boundaries. What are my non-negotiables? So my non-negotiables are, I've got 3 weeks vacation. Those are the first things that go on the calendar, right? Things like that. And then how do I communicate those? I think the rest of it is really just around finding, once you have your boundaries, is finding the balance and really looking at your work when you get more because people have been laid off or because there's a new project, looking at it, not being afraid to say, okay, well, I'm going to take this on, but this is going to go away as a result, or maybe this isn't needed anymore because the business is changing.
I used to feel that sometimes people arguing a lot or debating a lot or a high level of people opposing one another's views was like a sign of a broken culture. Like it was sort of like, oh my God, I'm going to have to quell this, or my team is not aligned, or, Houston, we have a problem. But I think like it really took me some time to realize though, like the more like debate you have and the more people being comfortable challenging one another's views, that to me is a sign of like a healthy culture. Like if you don't have that, something is wrong.
So how does blame break down that trust?
Well, I'll start with kind of the first part of the question. What do we lose when we cast others as a villain or we villainize things? I always use the example of, it's like looking through a dirty lens or looking out of a dirty window. You're not seeing the complete picture, right? You're only seeing bits and pieces. And the problem with being caught in the villain trap is that you no longer see the person for who they are. You only see the person for the story that you've created about them. And that's the interesting thing about the villain trap is it starts with a trigger. It's that employee who you ask to give feedback on a document and you get it back and they've redlined the crap out of it. Right. And then your ego's a little bit bruised because you're like, I thought it was a really good document. So what do? You're like, well, you know what? This is all part of Gary's plan. He's never liked me anyway. And so now he's doing this. And so you begin to go down this road of creating a story. And then that story turns into, well, Gary's never liked me. We've all, he's always been blah, blah, blah. And suddenly I don't see Gary for the great, smart, intelligent, dedicated employee that he is. I just see him for the story that I've created about him. And 9 times out of 10, that story is so false and not true. So you think about how that impacts business. I talk about being it's almost like a silent cancer in your organization, because it's happening and people are getting put into the villain trap, and it's quiet. It's not loud. It's not like people screaming. And suddenly they just go along to get along. And then they're not saying anything. They go silent on you, and they're doing their work, but they're just doing the bare minimum until one day when they leave.
Blueprint and a playbook of sorts that would make it very clear for every single faceteer of what we are, what we believe, and to a large extent, how do we get there? Like, what does good look like? What does that mean? That process was so helpful because it created a very clear North Star for the entire business for decision making. And that became embedded in the actual decisioning engine for all of the things we do. And then the last thing is that we just enforced it. So I have something I use that the team kind of laughs. I have a triple win framework. And when we make big decisions, it has to be a win for our team internally. It has to be, it's always member first. So the first row is, how is this a win for the member? How is this a win for the internal team? And how is this a win for the company? And it's really, that's how we've made this like a continuous question on every decision, even when we have tough decisions that we have to make where there is a trade-off to be made.
And so I'm actually pretty excited. It's the first time I've really said this publicly, but on our website, we have a pricing page. And we literally say on there, have you ever seen a staffing agency or executive search firm that has pricing? It's like, nope. Nobody puts pricing because that's not what they do. But yet every time I go to a website, the first thing I'm looking for is, what's it going to cost me? Right? And I'm like, why don't we have pricing? Why don't we open about this? I mean, why don't we show them options? And so we started coming up with these options, just like the 5-year warranty, to say, after a certain amount of time, up until the 5 years, we'll basically try to replace them again. But we're only going to charge you half of that percentage. And, there's a lot of caveats to it, obviously. And that's the negotiating piece. And so that allows everybody to come out as a win.
And it's up, I feel like it's up to me, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, to help start teaching my kids. The older one is at that age and he's, lights out with math. Start teaching them the fundamentals of this stuff.
Absolutely. So I think two things actually. I saw on LinkedIn someone posted a survey that was conducted by the National Council of Financial Services, but the amount of time that schools spend on financial literacy compared to really the subject is very minimum. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. It's just, how do we incorporate financial literacy within the curriculum? It could be math, or it could be just throughout the day, making, empowering the kids to think about decisions that they make and think about that opportunity cost of those decisions that they're making. So I know there are a lot of institutions and a lot of companies that are promoting financial literacy in the schools, but you're right. Like, you can start at home, even with your young children. They start developing those mindsets and behaviors early on.
Oh yeah. I'm going to ask you a fun question as a wrap up to the main section of the interview section. If you had just 1 minute to talk to a CFO or whoever, somebody in the C-suite on the fence about coaching, what's the case you'd make?
Oh, I would say, what do you spend on turnover?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
they would
go ahead.
probably say, I don't know.
Yeah, I was just going to say, they're going to say, I don't know, I bet.
And then I'd be like, great, let's talk about it, because it's like, I bet you're spending a lot of money on that. And it's not the cost of doing business, it's the cost of you doing business.
Anyways, done is better than perfect, right? Like, start doing it and you get better over time. You even know this with the podcast.
Right.
I felt this way when I launched my podcast. I was like so critical of every question I asked and everything, everything I was doing. But I just told myself I had to let it go. Done is better than perfect. Start getting it out there. And eventually I will look like the brilliant podcast host that I hope to become. And right now I'm getting there, right? So that consistency is what's going to help me get there eventually. Right now, I may feel like, that imposter syndrome. I may feel that fear of doing it. And I'm saying me, I mean, I've done all of this, but like if somebody is thinking about writing that book or thinking about putting out that content and they have that fear, just start doing it and just start being consistent and set a goal for yourself of how often, how you're going to approach that, whatever that is, and just start doing it. And when you start showing up every day, people start to notice, and it will take off.
Best piece of advice I can give you is this, especially if you're in the corporate realm. This is where I fell flat on my face early in the game. I thought I was a high performer in corporate, and therefore switching to entrepreneurship, I would crush it in entrepreneurship and then the stream story. And I ended up falling flat on my face. Like, I couldn't get anything to work because what I was doing is I had a corporate mindset playing an entrepreneur game. So like the breakthrough I had is corporate versus entrepreneurship is like checkers versus chess. The game board looks the same. It's the same game board for both games. The difference is the rules are completely different. So I was playing checkers with chess rules, and it just didn't work. And so I will fail by doing that. What I had to learn was to take a step back and learn how to play this new game of entrepreneurship. And my competitive edge was the experiences that I had beforehand. So that was like the biggest aha I had. Was it wasn't that I didn't have it, I just wasn't playing the right game with the right board and the right tools. So once I figured that out, once I took a step back to learn how to be the entrepreneur and play the online game, everything that I did at Deloitte and prior to became my unique competitive edge to make my playing the game, that better. So that to me was literally one of the biggest lessons that I learned making that transition. Learn to play the game.
And when you think about a message in general, whatever message that you have, whatever message you're communicating, there's someone that's going to be on the receiving end of that message. That's your audience, that's your listener, that's your team, right? That's your clients, that's the people who are employees of your company or what have you. And there's so many parallels in between both of these. And one of the major ones is, for me, coming down to values. So how do you want people to feel when you communicate with them, I think is a big one. And I think that's at the center of a lot of the culture shifts that we see, a lot of the conversations that have started to change. But it's really important to think about, how do you make people feel when you communicate with them? So I've always looked at this from 2 points of view. When I'm communicating with my audience, or if I'm communicating with clients, or if I'm communicating with my team, how do you want them to feel on the receiving end of your message? So then I go back down to, okay, well, what are our own values within ourselves, right? And I have some values that I have. Kindness, care, and connection are my top 3. If you can lead with kindness, you can add care into your message, and then you can connect in a deeper way. When you genuinely care about other people, they feel that. People feel heard and listened to and understood. And I think that's a really important piece for building a relationship with somebody. Because at the end of the day, when we have a podcast, we have a show, we have a blog, we have a newsletter, whatever the medium is, it's the message that you're sharing within that medium. But then when it lands, it's, how does the person feel when they're receiving that message? That's the difference between someone wanting to be a part of your circle even further, or distance themselves. Do they see themselves in you? Do they see themselves in the message that you're communicating and that you're sharing?
As we wrap up part 2 of this retrospective, I want to once again say thank you. Thank you to all my guests who have trusted me with their stories, their ideas, and their experience. And thank you to every listener out there, of course. Hey, if you've listened, if you shared an episode, if you engaged with me on social media, reached out personally, thank you so much. The show exists to support people who care about doing great work, right? Even when the environment around them is complex, it's demanding, and it's always changing, right? So if these conversations have given you any clarity, any perspective, or just reassurance that you're not alone out there in your thinking or thought process, then the show's doing what it's meant to do. And year 1 has been a blast. Only 10% of podcast hosts get this far. So I'm pretty thrilled about this. And I've learned so much. And year 2 is already taking shape. So I've got 1 year under my belt now. And maybe I have a half a clue about what I'm doing. And I can make year 2 even better. So we've got more great conversations lined up for you. And hey, if there's a topic you want to hear about, or you know a great guest, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. So for now, enjoy the rest of the holidays. Hopefully you're taking a breather. Thank you for being part of your customer success, and we'll see you in year 2. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found something insightful that will enhance your experiences and drive your success. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts to help us improve the show. Don't forget to head on over to maracxl.com for more ways to connect with me and learn more about experience management. Until next time, I'm Gary Mara, working hard for your customer and your success.